Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 126. It's our second simulcast with Ryan at Praxis behind the obscure. I haven't decided what title I'm going to give this episode yet, as I'm talking to you right now, to be honest, so you already know. I can only wonder. In today's episode, Ryan and I are going to be talking a little bit about Jainism, Buddhism, and, my trip up to Rajgir, and yoga, and kind of the traditions, the various non-Vedic Indian traditions, kind of from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar area, that especially those ones, especially Jainism, mostly Jainism. But before we get to that, or I'm supposed to say, but first, transformation and footnotes. So I will read the next part in the book my dad wrote in 1976, which I published recently. You may have seen it look like this, but if you go to Amazon right now, it's got a photo. The cover is a photo that I took when I was hiking up to Annapurna Base Camp in Nepal. So this is a photo by the author's son when he was on his spiritual journey in the Himalayas. I'll just get to the reading. What you're hearing is Jean-Michel Jarre. So thank you, Mr. Jarre, for that. All right. Transformations. Chapter 6, verses 16 through 22. Verse 16. In order to play survival, it is necessary to pretend that things are incomplete and that they need to get better in order to be complete. Also, it is necessary to believe that there isn't enough to go around and get everybody playing to agree. Verse 17. Anyhow, that's what flesh play sphere junkies take for totally granted, believe in, despair of, and hope against. The survival game, which they get off on, or get off on not getting off on, or something more Baroque in terms of onion layers of getting off on whatever. Verse 18. It's what's so for them, in other words. Not so obviously, something else is really so. Not to be believed in, not to be hoped for, just so. Aliveness games. Verse 19. Aliveness games start when one comes from the position of taking total responsibility for creating everything complete, and forgetting that the whole thing is a process of unfolding, not understanding it, getting it. Understanding is a flesh play sphere junkie mind game, equivalent to verbal stereotyping with a hope attached to it that somehow some comfort release will come from a given verbal or mathematical formula, and that it will end happily ever after right there. Verse 20. Truly, you and I know that sometimes some understandings work, some for a longer time than others. These give flesh play sphere junkies ample opportunities to polish their mirrors and be right about them. Then understandings stop working, and flesh play sphere junkies get mean and play survival and make wrong on people who point out that their pet understandings do not work or at least do not work for them personally. Verse 21. Understandings create space for understanding one thing at a time. Getting things creates space for many understandings and for moving off of positions. Verse 22. The first step in getting things is to get where you are with them, which means being able to get off of stereotypes about what is hip and or unhip, should-oughts, and being willing to admit that you don't get it if that's what's so for you, and being able to put that there by hanging out with it. You may even get nothing. Rejoice. Transformations. John Dan Reeb. Link in the description below if you're watching me on YouTube. If you're hearing the podcast, you can search for JOHN DANREIB on Amazon. Get yourself a copy. It's available on Kindle as well. And so, without further ado, let's get to that simulcast with Ryan, shall we?
All right, cool.
Simulcast!
Simulcast. Welcome to the Praxis Behind the Obscure End.
Thank you. Welcome to the Esoterinerd podcast, episode 126.
Okay, cool. So I think I'm 46, actually, I believe. So I'd have to go back and check.
Okay, nice.
But
nice.
yeah.
Some numerology, so.
Yeah.
172 if you add them together.
Oh,
no, is that right? Yeah, that's right.
Hey, Americans can't do math. So I'm going to whip out a calculator.
72 is important. But
right.
Add a Coke to that, and I don't know what you get. But anyway.
Right. Well, it's funny. The one shocking thing I remember when I first moved here to Korea, like you would look at middle school kids' math textbooks, right? And middle school, I think we were studying like pre-algebra or something like that. You know, maybe in like late middle school. Then Algebra 1, geometry. I mean, I remember the order like that: Algebra 1, geometry. And if you're really smart, you made it to like trigonometry and pre-calculus.
Right.
And if you're super smart, it'd be like. The one class that was like the AP calculus, right? Like the one class in my school. But like in Korea, middle school students are studying what the super smart high school American students are studying.
Oh my gosh! Oh, what a shame.
Yeah,
I mean, good for them, but shame for Americans.
Yeah, it's pretty wild stuff. But anyways, yeah. So I was having a conversation with some other friends of mine, and sort of the topic of Jainism came up. And the one person who came to mind was you, because you had traveled to what region of India?
It's the state is Bihar, and the city is Rajgir. It was known in ancient times as Rajagaha or something like that. And that was back when Mahavir was the spiritual advisor for the king. And that was actually a stone's throw from where Lord Buddha was sitting under the Bodhi tree at around the same time. It's a little bit of a guess as to, like, there isn't any hard evidence that they knew each other. But Lord Buddha does talk about Mahavir, but Mahavir doesn't talk about Lord Buddha. So, and based on the guesstimates as to the time periods, Mahavir was probably a little older. So he was either 100 and something years older or 20 years younger or somewhere in between, like based on the overlapping guesstimates as to when they were around on Wikipedia, So I had, when I went to, I don't know if you don't mind if I just launch into it here,
No, it's fine, but I'm wondering, like, geographically, you said Bihar, is that right? That's the name of the region?
Bihar. It's kind of...
Is that where Bodh Gaya and Varanasi are, or am I off here?
Yeah. Well, Varanasi, actually, I'm a little bit ignorant. Forgive me to my Indian friends. I'm not sure what state Varanasi is in off the top of my head, but
You're not a real Indian, are you? Oh my
but
God.
Bodh Gaya and Rajgir are most certainly in Bihar. And I think Varanasi might be in a different state. I don't think it's in Bihar, but maybe it is. Okay, now, well, I can look it up real quick if you want. Here, say something. While
that's okay. Well, while you're looking it up, I think the only reason I really ask is obviously because the Buddha, he attained enlightenment. He went to as many people know, right, under the Bodhi tree, and then
Uttar Pradesh.
Okay. So
Varanasi is in Uttar Pradesh, which I think is just to the left of Bihar.
Yeah, I think it's a neighboring state, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's pretty clear by accounts that they were at least somewhat contemporaries, maybe alive at the same time, and they had maybe they had crossed paths. We're not really sure about that.
Definitely Buddha was aware of Mahavir, but Mahavir might not have known about Buddha. Mahavir's time might have ended before Buddha's really got going. Or Lord Buddha became famous.
What I thought is really interesting is they're both on their mission to achieve liberation. They're both doing their thing. And to kind of backtrack to the history of yoga, the history of this movement before these guys were even around, because there we can track them to that's the 4th century BCE, roughly, right? Roughly. Oh, 6. Okay, I'm way off then.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's okay, the 6th. That's right. Okay. However, prior to that, they tracked this movement called the Śramaṇa movement, which is about the 8th century BC, so about 200 years roughly prior to this, which is when you had basically people that it was sort of like a reaction to the Vedic movement. The Vedics was basically, they believed that was the manifested text, and you had the caste system, and they had their whole system, and there was a reactionary movement to that kind of said, we need to go back to nature, we need to go back within. It's not about these Vedas, not about these texts, right? Although the Vedics will say, the hardcore Vedics will say, oh no, actually yoga's all from the Vedas, or this or that.
Of course. Everything belongs to wherever you're from, wherever your bias is, everything good and interesting and useful and wise came from you people. I knew an older Finnish woman, and everything was Finnish. The Finns came up with everything. Don't believe anyone. It was all Finland is the origin of everything.
Right. Yeah. It's a nationalism, right?
There's other examples of that. I don't need to go into all
absolutely. But so you had the Śramaṇa movement where they're going back. They were kind of it's almost you can almost think about it from what I've studied, it's almost like the hippie movement in a way where they're we got to drop out of society, sort of figure out our way, you know what I mean? It's you have this mainstream caste system, Vedas, no, it's on us to tune in, tune out, and drop out, but more in the sense of naturally going into nature, meditating, figuring this stuff out, right, themselves. So you have this whole movement, and one thing I learned that was interesting is how all the swamis wear the orange robes, and you see the old school Buddhists who have the Theravada Buddhists, you go to Thailand, they're all in the orange the monks gear, basically, right? Or all the Theravadan countries that are the old school Buddhist tradition are wearing these orange robes, but that's actually, and the swamis of today, right? You look at modern swamis, but that's it's a growth out of that Śramaṇa movement that I was talking about. Because what they would do is they would take rags. They're kind of like hippies, right? Like tie dye, basically. So what they do is they would take white rags, white robes and rags that they had that they could muster, knit them together, and then they would throw them in turmeric, which would dye them. Which would dye them orange, and that's why you see, it was actually just basically what would be the equivalent of streetwear, tie-dye stuff, right? But then that became funny is come full circle to being the institutionalized clothes of the
and you can see that pattern. You can see a similar example with Christianity starting out as a bunch of hippies, and how that became institutionalized, and now you have institutionalized, sort of nationalized. I won't say too much because I live here and I'm.
We don't want to see somebody come in the back.
I love the government of my adopted country very much, and I have.
Anyways, you had this movement, right, and then you had people like the hardcore. What's interesting, because you're reading the Pali Canon too, you have Buddha talking about all these different groups, because he was a Śramaṇa too. He was going out to the woods to figure out his way, basically, right? and he met the hardcore materialists, and then like the hardcore ascetics, like all these different groups that were experimenting, with human nature and the mind and trying to figure this stuff out, right? And then and a lot of, we don't really need to go into the Buddha story because there's a lot of other podcasts about that, and I've covered some Buddhist stuff.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of what we know about the Śramaṇa sects, there were approximately 60 different orders run by different masters, teachers, cult leaders, whatever, around the 6th century BC, and the ones that we know about. We know Jainism directly from the Jainists, and Lord Buddha talked about the Jainists, but other than Buddhism and Jainism, as far as I know, the ones that we know about from Lord Buddha. And then, but there was Ajivika, which did last up until, I think it lasted 1,000 years or longer, but it hasn't been around, I think, in at least 700 or 800 years at this point. But there's references to.
That was another one, another like lineage or another movement, but
it was totally different, though. It was, it was like they have some things in common. Like, you could, but it's at a certain point. Like if we define the Śramaṇa movement based on the attributes of Jainism and Buddhism, then we can say, because Jainism and Buddhism had a lot in common, that they were meditating, they were seeking enlightenment, they were abstaining from clinging, abstaining from desire and materialism and all this. But Ajivika, they were drinking alcohol and they were having sex with women and they were dancing and they were, having children, and just kind of like, wait, so what is the Śramaṇa movement if this is also a Śramaṇa sect? And then there was another one where, and also in Ajivika, they believe there's no free will. Like what you do and what you're going to do from here on out, you have no actual control over it because everything. So, that's kind of different from Buddhism. It kind of reminds me of the ancient Greek philosophers, how you'd have one guy come along and say, here's what I think, and someone else come along and say, here's what I think. So, a lot of them would meditate, but there was one that was into hardcore materialism and didn't believe in any kind of afterlife. And then there was another one that, that they just were so different based on Buddha's description. So it's kind of like we only have a perhaps biased perspective. Because of course, Lord Buddha, the things, I don't think there were scribes actually writing down what he said. So the best we have is the remembered and maybe a little bit made up, or recollections of his students.
Well, you're secondhand account,
right? And if you, I don't think you've ever been in a cult, but speaking as one who has been in a cult, if somebody comes along and says, tell me about the other 5 main cults that are just like yours, then you're going to say, well, this guy is a total materialist, and this guy is abusing children, and this guy, and kind of put them all in a negative light, and like, what are the ones that have the true stuff?
Right. Well, everyone claims that,
I love Buddhism, but I'm also a smartass and, a cynic, and I try to be realistic. So, it's important to keep these things in mind, that it might have been that they were all meditating and they were all relatively good, but one of them, seemed maybe to lean a little bit in a particular direction, and this one leaned a little bit in that direction, but the followers of Buddha wrote it down as if they were 100% that. So we don't really know without a time machine, because that's the only source that we have.
What about, since you live in India now, modern day India, is Jainism, it's still something people know about and talk about, and like when I took
it's there,
world religions course, it's still like, it's funny because you'll read like Christianity, that's like a whole, 50 pages, like when you get the world religions book, right?
Right.
Christianity, 50 pages, and then like, Judaism.
Jainism and Buddhism get a paragraph.
Buddhism gets like maybe 5, 10, and then Jainism 1 page, something like that, right? And so it is still something that's being practiced there, huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
There are Jainist temples. Probably if I had a really good throwing arm, I could hit one with a rock from my balcony. Like not visibly, but I know they're like down the street, and so especially in Bihar. Now Bihar, or Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, mostly Bihar, was kind of the hotbed of a lot of these movements. And like I said, Mahavir, it was a 13.5-hour walk, which means an hour and a half drive. Back then, I think in terms of walking, because back then people were walking. So it was a day's journey to get from Bodh Gaya to Rajgir. So the fact that now what blew my mind, I can tell the story a little bit if you want. What happened with me was I went to Bodh Gaya with Priyal, and then she wanted to take me to Rajgir. And at the time I was like, I've never heard of Rajgir, but we'll go, sure. And I knew Nalanda University was in Rajgir. So we went to Rajgir and we went to Nalanda University, which is a whole other topic, and I won't get sidetracked right now. But that's an amazing thing. But then, she was saying we should visit some Jainist temples, but it was really hot that day. And so we were like, next time, in a year or two, And then our friend Koal was there as well. And he went and walked down the street at night when it had cooled off and said, hey, it's cooled off. And there's this Jain temple right down the street. And it's Virayatan, Veerayatan. I guess these days there's branches, there's different types of Jainism, of course, but they all have their core beliefs in common. And so we went, and they had little dioramas, little, models and little descriptions of what was going on. And I was just sort of absorbing all of this information. And I was like, wait a minute. Do I understand correctly that Mahavir was famous teaching the king in the city of kings? Rajgir means city of kings. And in this sort of relatively metropolitan, cosmopolitan for the time, 600 BC, in I think Magad, was that active at the time? I think it was, but it might have come later. But anyway, so he was well known and teaching Jainism, teaching asceticism, teaching meditation, non-materialism, and all of this stuff. And his own personal story, Mahavir's. This is Mahavir, by the way.
Cool.
He's called the 24th Tirthankara, which I'll explain what that means in a minute. But so he's depicted as looking a lot like Lord Buddha. So he fasted for 15 years and taught all these things, non-attachment and don't have sex and all of these things. And again, some of the other so-called ascetic religions, didn't have those same rules. And then meanwhile, 13.5 hours walk away from the big city, out in the wilderness, Bodh Gaya, there was an aspiring, a former prince who was aspiring on the ascetic path, and he was starving himself. And he was with a bunch of other ascetics who were starving themselves. And then when he decided to have a bowl of rice, the ascetics around him said, yeah, you broke the rules. And then he went his own direction. And I was like, it seems to me that Lord Buddha was a Jainist, or that he was actually a practicing Jainist as a follower of Mahavir directly or indirectly. And then he went his own way and made the middle way and said, okay, it's just like Jainism, but you're allowed to eat bowls of rice and you don't have to wear a little scarf in front of your face. And I was like, am I crazy? Am I sounding crazy? I said to Priyal, who's from there, who's from like not far from Rajgir. And she said, well, no, everybody kind of knows that. Maybe you know that. Maybe the people in Bihar know that, but that's not common knowledge around the world. People don't say, right. No, Lord Buddha started out as a Jainist. Now, of course, Jesus, being Jewish
and being kind of at that crux point of the Roman occupation of Judea is very important to the context of his life story. So everybody knows that Jesus was originally Jewish, for lack of a better term.
Yeah,
but nobody says Lord Buddha was. Everybody, I think, assumes Lord Buddha was Hindu because he was from India,
right,
or born in Nepal. But but I think he was on more of a Jainist path, and like you said, and definitely it comes across in the early Buddhist teachings that he was actively. I mean, he was friendly with the Brahmins that were friendly with him. But he would have issues sometimes with certain Brahmins, and sometimes, like one of the Buddhist nuns was raped by a Brahmin in the story, and it's like, okay, so they're not kissing the arses of the Brahmins, but they're not completely throwing them in the fire either. They're saying that some Brahmins were very respectful of Lord Buddha and would give him food and this kind of thing. But the very beginning of the first basket of the Tipitaka, the earliest teachings of Buddha, starts off with a conversation between a Brahmin and Lord Buddha, and the Brahmin's telling him, I hear that you came into my city, but you didn't offer me a seat, and you didn't give me food, and you didn't, what's the word? Prostrate
yourself to me.
Yeah. And Buddha said, when a Buddha prostrates himself to somebody who's not worthy to be prostrated to by a Buddha, that person splits in half as if they were struck by lightning. So out of respect that I didn't do that. And so the Brahmin was like, you have no tact, or you have no taste. And Lord Buddha kept saying, it is true. You could say that I have no taste if you mean that I have no taste for, hatred or material things or all these things. But I know that's not what you meant, is it? Then he finally lays it all out. This is what happened to me when I was meditating under the Bodhi tree. I went through this stage of this stage. This happened. And then finally I remembered all my past lives. And then it was all clear. And here I am. And finally the Brahmin said, I want to be one of your lay people. Can I follow you? And then, so it was a really nice introduction to the story, but I'm getting sidetracked. So,
that's fine. What's a good little background, but who do you know much about the history of Mahavir? So was he, you mentioned he was a king, or he was
a holy man who was the teacher of the king.
He was a teacher of the king. Okay. So do you know what kind of is there any, did you ever read the background, what kind of family, we know that Buddha came from, a royalty in Nepal, basically, right? Like a royal,
I've
he was known to be like a prince, he lived a very lavish life. And once he left his sort of palace complex, that's when he started there's actually poor people inside. And,
I've heard reference made to Mahavir being from the same caste as Lord Buddha.
Okay.
So it seems, in a way, a person could make a little joke about how, rich kids are the ones that go off and start talking about it's all about non-materialism, man. And the poor people are easy for you to say, you grew up with a silver spoon in your mouth and you want to talk about let's get rid of money,
Right. We're just trying to make ends meet here, but for sure. So this Mahavir, he was in the Śramaṇa movement, and then he sort of founded his own school, which is called Jainism, right?
Well, yes and no. This is Parshvanat. He's the 23rd Tirthankara.
Tirthankara, interesting. So what does that say?
So Tirthankara, now being an ignorant American, I didn't know what a ford was, other than a car. But apparently a ford, it's has to do with getting from one side of the river to the other side of the river. There's certain currents that can carry you across. And that made me think immediately of the Heart Sutra, which ends with to the other side, enlightened, thoroughly to the other side, to the other shore. And so that's the idea of a Tirthankara. It's a religious ford. So it's a person who, by following them, it's like you're going into a channel that will carry you from the side of mundane existence to the other side of the river, which is enlightenment. And but there were 20, at least according to the story. Now, a person, of course, just like with anything, with Buddhism, with Christianity, you could say, oh, someone made it up hundreds of years later. Okay, maybe you could say that. But if we take them at their word, now I had this up here, but I lost it. There was the first Tirthankara. Basically, these were 300 years apart. So Parthvanat was in the 9th century BC, and Mahavir was in the 6th century BC. And then there's 22 other ones. And the earliest one, of course, some of the writing says, he was 100 feet tall and lived for 1,000,000 years. And, things get exaggerated over time. But, there's statues in the Indus River Valley civilization ruins that seem to be doing Jainist specific poses. They have certain poses they do where Lord Buddha is basically all about sitting, as far as meditation, sitting. But in Jainism, they have certain practices they do where you stand and you step in a certain way. And so there's kind of that relationship with yoga there. And it seems that, and again, this is, the best I've been able to piece together, and I didn't go to, didn't get a master's degree and all this stuff, but I just sort of, I've got these books that I got from that Jain temple.
Oh, what are those? What are the titles of those?
This is Samayik Sutra.
The Samayik Sutra, okay.
Yeah, but it's actually 25 different sutras. And I'll give you a link. You can put it in the description if you want of yours, and I'll put it in the description of mine. That will take people to my recital of all 25, because you can't really find this on Amazon.
Okay.
But it's
like the major holy text of Jainism.
Yeah, but they were written at around the same time as Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, the 2nd century BC.
Okay.
So there's nothing that I know of that's written down from the 6th century. Nobody's saying, hey, I'm sitting here, I'm watching Mahavir teach the king. The nice thing about Ehe Dogen, Master Dogen, is there was a scribe sitting there writing down his exact words. And so it's by reading it, at least the English translation, it even says what the weather was like. It's 1 a.m. It's Thursday. It's April. It's 12:42. We're at this temple. It's pouring rain right now. We're freezing our asses off, but Dogen won't stop talking, and this is what he's saying. So you can really kind of astral project there. But the best we can do with this to piece together is from the sutras in the 2nd century, which sound a whole lot like the Yoga Sutras, talking about the yamas and the niyamas, and so it makes me wonder, because I've heard my yoga teacher down in Mysore talking about how a lot of yoga comes from Jainism, but I've heard other people, white teenage, yoga teachers and 20-something yoga teachers in California say that Jainism comes from yoga. I mean, whichever, if someone's a hardcore Jainist, then they want to say it all comes from Jainism. And if somebody's a hardcore yogi, they want to say it all comes from yoga. But I don't know. I mean, because if they're right, and the first Tirthankara goes back, 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 years, then maybe yoga comes from Jainism, and then people want to, the people from the Vedic traditions want to say, well, yeah, these ascetic traditions, maybe they came from Jainism, but they worked their way into the Upanishads, or they, vice versa. So it's all kind of mixed up, and it's hard to, and people have strong opinions about where things came from. But it seems to me that, like you said, it was a reaction against, and I'm sorry I'm babbling so much, but yeah.
But it's true that I think most Buddhists will say it comes from Buddhism, most Jains will say it comes from Jainism, Hindus will say Hinduism. However, I think we don't have a clear, track of where it came from. However, it's clear that the Śramaṇa movement is what led to yoga, which led to these movements. So I almost see it as like a soup where these different, maybe yoga is the core, people are experimenting with their breath, experimenting with posture, with meditation, and then you have these different branch. You have Jainism,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Where they all grow out of. It doesn't necessarily need to be like, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
More multi-dimensional, non-linear, happening simultaneously, perhaps, right?
At least now it is. If we had a time machine, then we could go find back. It's sort of in that quantum state of unknowing, like,
right.
But yeah, but definitely Jainism is more kind of organized, where yoga is more broad. Like the way that the Yoga Sutras was written, it's not, now that you're a member of the school of the Yoga Sutras, you are a follower of Patanjali. No, Patanjali was saying, hey, let me let you know what the yogis have been doing since God knows when. And then just kind of laying it all out. These are the steps, these are the 8 limbs, and this is how to be a yogi. Go be a yogi. And, you know, it might be of assistance to find someone who's already a master to help you along the way, but it isn't exactly necessary. Where Jainism is there, and now here's one aspect of where, I mean, I was kind of like, I'll just say it's a theory, and I don't mean for the scientific aware, science literate people, I don't mean a theory. I mean how us idiots outside of the scientific community use the word
speculation,
like a hypothesis. Yeah, it's a speculation. I guess it's not a theory in the stricter sense of the word. That Lord Buddha was kind of learned Jainism and then said, okay, yes, but here's what we're going to do. It's almost like there was too much gatekeeping. And when he talks about Mahavir, he uses a phrase that means too restrictive. So I think that's kind of where he was coming from, was by allowing there to be hundreds of monks in his order, and his rules that'll get you kicked out. He only has a few rules that'll get you kicked out. And there's so many bad things you can do and not get kicked out, but there's like levels of punishment and things like that. And so he was basically saying, you know, stay on the path, keep going, work at it, try not to give into your, you know, baser nature. And if you do give into your baser nature and, you know, do this and this and this, then we need to have a talk. If you do this extreme thing, then you get kicked out. You can't be a monk anymore. Where the Jainist order was much more strict and specific and kind of gatekeepy. But in Buddha's day, there was more emphasis on that, on how the layman, instead of like that, basically, if you can't become enlightened yourself, then you should worship the enlightened people, which is kind of like, all right. And they also had an interesting thing, which actually almost has a ring of truth to it. I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but it's sort of like they were saying that the gods in heaven, the gods like Shiva and all these gods are made up. And that the only gods that are real, the Jainists, they were saying that the only gods that are real are men or women, you might say, but they probably just meant men, you know, people, humans who become enlightened and become omniscient. They also had an emphasis on omniscience, which it was kind of implied, and I mean, it wasn't as much emphasized in early Buddhism. Enlightenment was more like you're free from the suffering that comes with kind of shooting yourself in the foot with clinging. That you have mastery over your own mind and you don't cling anymore. And there's the CDs, which is kind of an again, which is where you get a little bit psychic or something. And then sometimes they say people levitate and all that. But Mahavir was supposed to be all-knowing. He knew everything, omniscient. He knew what you were going to say before you said it. And there's a little bit of that with Buddha, where nobody lies to the Buddha because they know that he can tell if they're lying.
Sort of all-knowing.
And he knows all of his past lives and things like that. These days, there's a lot of non-spiritual Buddhists, secular Buddhists, who kind of want to de-emphasize anything that's hocus pocus. And kind of make it all about, no, it's scientific. It's perfectly, totally rational. It's not a religion. It's a philosophy. And there's nothing spiritual about it. And it's like, if it's not spiritual, I mean, the word spiritual has a slippery meaning. but definitely there's spiritual things about it, and in the earliest texts of Buddhism, Lord Buddha, there was one of his students was saying, I saw a ghost and the ghost had knives coming out of its head. And then the other students were saying, he's crazy, he's lying. And Lord Buddha was saying, actually, I saw the ghost with the knives coming out of his head too. So has the ability to see astral,
Right.
And so that's in the earliest texts of Buddhism. So.
Right, for sure. So Mahavir, you said he's the 24th. What'd you call it?
Tirthankara.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. And then later on, these the books you had, the what'd you call it? The Samaya?
Yeah. The various sutras, there's the Namaskar Sutra. The book, if you can find it, is called the Samayik Sutra.
Samayik Sutra, okay.
And there's 25 sutras within it, and in the description below, you can find me reciting all 25 with commentary and jokes. And sometimes I get sidetracked.
Well, since you read, I mean, obviously, I'd imagine it was an oral tradition, like every other tradition, up until they finally, codified these sutras. But
right.
What were you read these all, so what were some takeaways? What were some perhaps differences between other traditions, or some unique aspects that you learned from reading those books?
One thing, I had a further, for example, he talks about the things that we learn in the high school book, that the Jainists are so nonviolent that they use a soft brush to brush the path in front of them so that they don't accidentally harm any small insects or ants. We all kind of hear that. People who've heard of Jainism, that's usually one of the things they hear. So there's a sutra where it's an apology and a repentance for the animals and creatures, sentient beings that we did harm today, or that we did harm without knowing it. So the best we can do is to do our best to not intentionally harm a sentient being. So naturally, they're vegetarians, and they, or at least that seems to be what's implied. And I'll get into a little bit about that with Buddhism. That's kind of an interesting nuance about that. But so they talk about small creatures with 5 senses, 4 senses, 3 senses, 2 senses, and 1 sense, which is that's pretty advanced thinking for 6th century BC, I think. We're kind of thinking that far, that there's things that are so small that you can't see them, or you can barely see them, that they don't have sight, sound, they only have touch. We know that there's photosensitive, not just chlorophyll, but there are our earliest single-celled ancestors, not the earliest, but the ones that when the eye was just beginning.
Right.
The ones that would come toward the surface of the water when the sun was out, or they would go away from the sun if it was too bright, and they started to survive better than the ones that couldn't sense light. So that light sensitivity.
They see it as sort of like a grave sin to hurt or kill anything that has any sort of intelligence or sentience, or.
Well, their definition of sentience, you hear people in the West saying, well, fish aren't really sentient and neither are chickens, but I think pigs are. But their definition of sentient includes things, just a tiny little blob that only has the sense of touch. That's a sentient being. And so you're not supposed to harm any sentient being. And then Lord Buddha, one thing that kind of made me think that there's something to my theory, of course, then it could be that, of the 60 different religions in that movement, that, 55 of them were all similar to Buddhism and Jainism, and that those weird examples that they gave are just weird examples.
They're the extreme ends, yeah.
Right, the total materialist and the guy who thinks there's no afterlife and all these different things. But yeah, Lord Buddha didn't want people digging. He thought that digging in the ground would harm sentient beings, or starting a fire just to sit around the fire and have fun. Starting a fire to survive or because you're ill was okay, but not just get a log and starting because you don't know what's living in that log,
Mm.
And so he was definitely, it was like taken for granted. At least I haven't read the whole Tipitaka. I'm only reading the rules.
Sure.
But it seems like there's some things that are already taken for granted when he stops to tell the rules, and they're the things that are sort of established in the Jain Sutras. So I was kind of imagining that maybe Lord Buddha knew the Jain Sutras, or maybe that they were common knowledge back then, that everybody kind of had heard of, at least sentiments like these.
Right. Well, it sounds like Jainism is really, it's like it takes everything very literal and carefully, like, oh, you can't, so for example, in Buddhism, intention is very important. Like, sure, maybe you're going to go, you got to go pick up your daughter from school and help her, get her education. And if you accidentally step on a bug on the way there, I mean, that's,
Yeah, in Jainism,
you're out there
in Jainism, you have to apologize in a
Right.
chant. There's a chant for apologizing and repenting from the unintentional harming of sentient beings, where in Lord Buddha's order, he just says, if it was unintentional, there's no wrongdoing.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't do anything.
No harm, no foul.
Yeah.
No crime, no
So
foul.
like if there's living things swimming around in some water, and you use that water to put out a fire, to wash, to drink, and if you knew there was living things in there, then it's a wrongdoing. But if you just took it and absentmindedly drank it, then pay attention next time. But you didn't do anything wrong.
So other than that, like the extreme, adherence to nonviolence, right? Ahimsa. What are some other unique traits of Jainism that you learned? What are some other like codified practices or suggestions?
Let me see if I can jog my memory, because it's been like a couple of years.
Oh, yeah, it has been a while since you read those.
Yeah. Let me just kind of flip through.
Also, do you notice, because you went to another question too, because you went to what's the name in Bahir?
Rajgir?
Rajgir, yeah. So I mean, there are probably a lot of Jain temples there too, right? Like iconography and statues and those lines. So are they, how much different, like aesthetically too? Like, are they, like the designs are way different than Hindu or Buddhist temples?
I mean, I think they have more in common with Hindu, but Bodh Gaya looks a lot like a Hindu temple, like the Mahabodhi temple. So I think that it's more to do with region and time period. So I think India has a style, and then Nepal has a style, Tibet has a style.
Right. It's more regional kind of architecture and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Indonesia has a style. And so since Buddhism was basically 99.9% wiped out about 1,000-ish years ago, 800 years ago, it happened at the same time as the Mughal, emperors took over India, who were Muslim and didn't really like Buddhism for whatever reason. I mean, they seemed to dislike Buddhism more than they disliked Hinduism. I can only speculate. I can only guess as to why that was. I've spoken to present-day Muslims who don't feel that way. But there was also apparently, it's an oversimplification apparently to say that the Muslims came in and got rid of Buddhism, because there was also Buddhism was becoming less popular for other reasons at the time. But anyway, what was I saying? So Buddhism continued to exist, obviously, in China, Japan, Thailand, you name it, Sri Lanka and Burma and Indonesia. So then in more recent centuries, in the last couple hundred years, and especially since India's independence, a lot of Buddhist organizations and temples from all of those regions have been more than happy to establish branches of themselves here in sort of the motherland, where it all kind of.
So it all comes full circle, basically.
Yeah. So you'll find a lot of like Sri Lankan or Burmese Theravadan Buddhism, or Chinese-based or Thai-based like Mahayana Buddhists, or especially Japanese. Rajgir, Japan, there's this love this love affair between Japan and India. Like, I think Japan, when India has like a big problem or an epidemic, Japan is like, how many $1 billion do you need? You're like, you don't have to pay us back. And India's like, please, we'll, we've got to pay you back. You gave us billions of dollars right at the moment we needed it. And Japan's like, if you have any old Buddhist statues or, like something from like 1,000 or 2,000 years ago that you can part with. And so as a result, you'll find all these like ancient Indian things in Buddhist temples in Japan, and all these like, formal plaques saying special thanks to Japan for bailing us out. And so there's a lot of things in Rajgir that are written in Hindi, English, and Japanese, or Japanese hotels. And there's a Japanese pagoda that's sort of famous. It's one of the white pagodas that are sort of everywhere in Asia. I think you probably have seen. In
Pokhara, they have one too as well. Yeah.
And I think there's at least 2 in Nepal, and there's a few there's one in Lumbini, the birthplace of the Buddha. So there's a lot of like obeisance. I had to learn the word obeisance. There's a lot of words from like 19th century and early 20th century English that are just used commonly in India. Obeisance, which is sort of like the act of prostrating, is an expression of obeisance, which is like
bow down, pay your respects.
Yeah, exactly. And being American, we're not into that.
So what?
Pay obeisance to no one. Like that's sort of
right. So were the Jains sort of like fully ingrained in the caste system? Did they kind of maintain that?
Oh no, they're outside. That's what we were talking about.
Yeah, because they're part of the Śramaṇa. They're kind of the dropout movement.
Right.
The yogi.
Yeah. They were like a counter culture.
Right. Yeah.
And so they consider themselves, and if you buy into the story, the origin story of them, they were here first. The Aryans brought all that Vedic stuff with.
Okay, interesting. And
slightly controversial, to talk about that, but
they also hold views of like reincarnation and the other the sort of doctrinal views. Okay.
So in the Vedic tradition, the Brahmin caste are the people who hold the religious authority. That if your father's father's father was the local priest, then you're going to grow up and be the local priest. And then if your father's father's father was a warrior, then you're going to be a warrior or a king if you're lucky. But you're not supposed to mix between these castes. And so the Śramaṇa traditions all kind of look at that and go, yeah, that's dumb. So it's kind of nice, I agree with that aspect of those traditions. And Lord Buddha, even in Dhammapada, the most famous of the Tipitaka texts, there's a whole section where he says, if you are true to your spiritual, he says, if you do this, if you practice this, if your word and your actions are the same, and you condemn materialism and you embrace love for all sentient beings, and this and that, then I call you a Brahmin. If you have matted hair and an orange cloth over yourself, and your father came from some family as opposed to some other family, I do not call you a Brahmin. It's like, okay, that's pretty damn direct. He's not pulling any punches with his anti-caste system thing there. But then it just sort of in casual speech, he'll make reference to, people of this class or this class, or the untouchables. It's just sort of like normal for them to talk that way, probably like it's normal for us to make reference to different demographics in our society, where maybe in 2,000 years, people might like listen to our podcast and say, he said African American, oh my God, how weird. It's like, well, yeah, that was something we said back then. It wasn't, I wasn't looking down on them when I said it. And I don't think when Lord Buddha talks about lower caste people, I don't think he's looking down on them. He's explaining something.
Right.
But he does differentiate, and oddly, in the rules, I'm like reading these rules, like, really now, if you're going to talk sexually to a woman, you're not supposed to make lewd references when talking to a woman. And by woman, I mean, a lady of a certain caste who's educated and knows the language you're speaking. And it's like, okay, with all these clarifications, you're giving monks like, okay, so go find someone who speaks a different language and is dirty and from a lower caste, and you can say whatever you want to that woman,
Right.
So it's kind of odd.
Right.
But it's interesting, like there's rules about like talking with your mouth full or chewing with your mouth open and stuff like that. They're the lowest rules. There's like, 90 something of the lowest rules. And it gets into really specific things. I'm like, wow, 2,600 years ago, he's saying, don't talk with your mouth full, like that. But yeah, so there's a lot of emphasis on worshiping of the Tirthankaras, which is
so
something
they see them as sort of these holy.
They're gods. They're the gods of Jainism.
And are they said to like reincarnate? Are they almost like bodhisattvas and they come back and they reincarnate, or are they? They
don't get into that. The bodhisattva concepts developed later within Buddhism, as far as I know.
Mahayana, that's true. Okay, good point.
Yeah.
These Tirthankaras, are they said to be like one incarnation, or they just like randomly pop up? Do you know what I'm saying? Like.
Yeah, they kind of randomly pop up
like
as
avatar, like avatar kind of.
Like I think the idea is when the teachings of Jainism have been forgotten, then a new Tirthankara is born to bring them back. So I think Buddhism kind of borrowed that concept from Jainism a little bit, I mean, maybe Jainism borrowed it from Buddhism. It's hard to say. Because I mean, Jainism, I think it's safe to say was influenced by Buddhism.
Well, the Hindu tradition has that too, right? Like the yugas, and then in the degenerate age, the avatar.
Right, that's true.
I mean, Krishna comes to bring back the,
in the
order or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, I think the way I was looking at it, Buddhism was sort of like the equivalent of, I don't know, Lutheranism if Jainism were Catholicism. I mean, these aren't exact, by any means or even close. But in other words, the one influenced the other. They both influenced each other. Mm-hmm. So Jainism might have been around first, but I think that Jainism, kind of like Buddhism was saying, this is what's wrong with Jainism. And the Jainists were like, maybe they have a point. Maybe we should stop doing that. Because you don't find anybody like encouraging starving yourself in Jainism. But that seemed to be something that maybe the early Buddhists were like, you don't need to starve yourself. Just don't pig out, just eat a little bit. It's fine, So I'm just flipping through. You're not supposed to like sit in a seat that someone of the opposite sex, it assumes, heteronormative, it has sat in recently. So, down to that much. Like, so it goes beyond it. Lord Buddha's time, it's don't touch a woman with desire in your heart. Jainism says, avoid sitting in a seat that a woman has been sitting in, for the previous hour. So it's a little more extreme with that stuff. They both say don't do the hanky-panky, but as far as hanky-panky adjacent or, things that could potentially one day lead to hanky-panky, Jainism seems to be a little more strict. Where Buddhism
maybe that's why Jainism died out so much. I mean,
it didn't catch on. It's still there.
Didn't fully die. How do Jainists procreate? You know what I mean? It's like,
this is just the people that are on the path. So like there's the monks. There's 5 levels. There's the arhants, which sounds like arhats. It's like some of the words are the same in Buddhism and Jainism. So it's probably just local dialect.
Arhats are like the enlightened, the ones who went beyond.
They're actually, I wish I had it memorized. I talk about it in those 25. If I recall correctly, the arhants are, if I recall correctly, this is a big if, people who have rejected all the bad within them, but they're not enlightened. So they're like almost enlightened.
They're on the threshold, kind of. They're at the
they're worshipped. So the CDs, and again, I might be getting it wrong. So I'll just say 5 levels because I remember it. It's almost like a hierarchy. And in the order, I was like, oh, this is like the imperator, the premonstrator, and the cancellarius, because there's one of the 5 levels is the people who do all the admin work for the temple. And it's like, oh, okay. So there's the teachers. The lowest rung is the sadhu. The sadhu, and that's a word familiar, in Vedic traditions these days as well. Right. Which is a sadhu is somebody who has said, "I promise not to eat meat or have sex, or I promise to stay on the path." That's a sadhu. Is someone who's dedicated themselves. So they're to be honored but not worshipped. Okay. Then there's the teachers. And then so that's a sadhu who's gotten to a certain level to where they can teach. And then there's the people who, then there's another level, I think the admin, like the temple admin. And then there's the arhants, which is the people who've rejected they've let go of clinging, they've let go of desire, and they have no temptation anymore. They've overcome temptation. And then there's the top level is the people who become enlightened, which are basically kind of on par with the Tirthankara.
So they're around Tirthankara level, basically.
Yeah. And so the arhants and the Tirthankaras and that top level are considered gods to be worshipped. And again, when translated into English started out as, the day that they used Roman letters to write in Anglo-Saxon vernacular was the day that the first rules were written about the church in Kent. I don't know if you know that story, but so it was the Kent and St. Augustine saying, if you steal from the church, you have to pay it back times 12, was the first sentence written in English. And everything about English, it has Christianity tied up in it and Christian connotation. Even for somebody from a family who hasn't been, whose great grandparents rejected Christianity and became an atheist, will still have a certain ring. So it sounds weird to say we worship these people as gods because of the way that worship it rings the bell. They don't necessarily worship these people because they don't see them as gods, but they're more respected, would you say, or they're more admired, or they're like role models? They see them as much as gods as a Hindu sees Shiva as God or as a god, which maybe could be comparable. I think that's where there's kind of a clashing between ardent Islamic practitioners and ardent Hindu practitioners, where the people that are like a Sufi master or a high person over here versus like a Brahmin or somebody who's a yogi who has an ashram, they tend to get along. They'll have great conversations all night about spirituality. It's the lay people that fight, the lay people that just sort of get the scraps and say, my scraps are superior to your scraps. I've got the real stuff. Yours is fake. But it's like to say, Allah is or El or God, capital G in English. Even in English, there's capital G God and lowercase g God. So they consider Tirthankaras lowercase g gods.
Okay.
There's no
monotheistic God or first cause, basically. Right?
Yeah, they don't get into that. Yeah, they don't get into capital G gods. So from their perspective, like a person could come from the outside and say, so you don't believe in a capital G God? And they say, oh, well, we have the Tirthankaras, they're our gods. So they believe that the best being that you can find is an enlightened human. That there aren't these other imaginary beings coming down from heaven and stuff like that. So it's kind of like halfway between sort of religion and atheism in a way.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I was just looking at this UK summary of Jainism, some University of London actually. So it says Yeah, it says, no gods. Jains don't believe in any spiritual beings. It is more or less based on self-reliance, not on the assistance of God. So they don't, yeah, as you said, basically, right?
Right.
And, it also says, this is interesting, 2 denominations. One of them believes you can have clothes, it sounds like. The other ones say that it has to do strictly with matters of attire. The Digambara sect monks are not allowed any possessions. This even includes clothes.
Right.
So those
that sounds like, there's like the extreme hardcore.
The
like,
hardcore,
for example, I think
Hardcore.
the Agori seem to be coming the other way, where there's people who are Agori in their religion and practice, but they work in IT, and then there's the people who live in the charnel grounds and actually eat, munch on human bones and stuff like that. And those are 2 distinct types of Agori. And Jainism, I think you could divide it more than that.
That makes sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
But the average Jainist, probably 99% of Jainists wear clothes. Yeah. Mahavir was famous for being naked, though. He walked around naked all the time.
Oh, okay.
He went to see the king naked.
Wow. Okay, that's different then. Okay.
Yeah. And Lord Buddha often talks about the naked ascetics, and I always wonder if he's talking about the Jainists, But the naked ascetics, they don't seem like Jainists in the story when he's talking about someone went and joined the naked ascetics. And
Mahavrata. So it says Jainism has 5 Mahavratas, and the one we all know is the extreme adherence to nonviolence, ahimsa, which we discussed.
Oh, right.
But also, as you mentioned, non-attachment, not lying, not stealing, sexual restraint, with celibacy, the ideal, as you mentioned, right?
And they even use the same words that the yogis use. Those are the 5 yamas. So ahimsa, brahmacharya.
Yeah, right.
I've forgotten.
Asteya, Asteya.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got it. Interesting. Okay.
Right. Okay. I'm still flipping through looking for. So it's a lot of obeisance, obey the teachings of the teacher.
This is interesting too. It says there are 7 tattvas. The tattvas are fundamental to truth, which constitute reality. So these are the soul, the non-soul, the influx of matter into the soul, the mixing of the soul and the karmas, the obstruction of matter into the soul. This is actually interesting. The gradual dissociation of karmic matter from the soul, and liberation. Liberation are
moksha. 7 steps.
Yeah, basically it sounds like.
How interesting.
Liberation or moksha is considered to be the attainment of an entirely
the 7 sampadas.
Free from karma.
That must be the 7 sampadas. I read about that, but somehow I didn't remember it. But yeah, it's sort of mentioned as a footnote in one of these sutras.
Yeah.
How cool.
What's interesting in all of these Śramaṇa-based movements, like the yoga, and then what later, comes to be born out of that, the Yoga Sutras, the Vedantists, the Buddhists, the Shaivites, the Tantrikas, all these movements talk about moksha. It's like the goal is liberation, moksha, right? Which most of them define in very similar ways, right? Like you're beyond. So even for them, they say that moksha is considered to be the attainment of a state free from any karmic influences. So it's like you're off of the rat race. Right. You're beyond cause and effect. You're beyond birth, basically. So interesting. There are all these different paths, but sounds like they all want the same goal of moksha, right? That's what they're after, right? Yeah.
Where the Vedantic or the Vedic traditions are more about, being born in a higher caste, or if you do good, if you do bad things, you're born in a lower caste. If you do good things, you're born in a higher caste. And so it's kind of like assumed you're going to keep going round and round. And so these are the guys that have the audacity to come in and say it is possible. There is a path. There is a way to get out of the loop. Yeah,
cast rat race. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So it says also vegetarianism, fasting, prayers, meditation, festivals, rituals, pilgrimages, and monasticism. So I figure their main temple is that one in I keep forgetting the name. Rajneesh, what'd you say?
Rajgir.
I mean, they must have their main temple there, right? Like
well, there's more than one branch, so it depends on who you ask. But I mean, they probably have their like ancient historical ones, and this and that. The one we visited wasn't like a main one, but it was like one of the well-known branches. And it was just nice to see the people, and they were like well dressed. It was like they were, dressed up to go to a wedding, like in saris and this kind of thing, but wearing makeup and kind of perfume and things like that too. I mean, the women, obviously the men weren't wearing saris, but like dressed up to go to the temple museum, or to maybe they were going to a function, just sort of like if you I've noticed from going to different sorts of churches, like if you go to a Greek Orthodox church on Easter, then people are dressed up like they're going to a high function, like they're going to be, like dressed up like they're going to the Academy Awards or something. And
sure.
Or something,
Right,
but if you go to like a Protestant church on a regular Sunday, then, their clothes are clean.
Right.
They're not wearing dirty clothes.
Yeah, they're all different. Different strands and
maybe whatever.
Different cultures. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Well, it says the Jains are vegetarian, but they also cannot eat. So no meat and fish, obviously. No eggs. Also, no onions. Oh man, no potatoes. No potatoes. And no garlic. Oh man, just shoot me in the head already.
Maybe because it arouses, some kind of, it arouses desire. Like I said, more strict. So less popular. So if you come in, to a new place, I've got a new teaching to teach you. Oh, what is it? Okay, well, first, when you pray, you have to put this little piece of cloth in front of your face, and also you have to stand like this, and then do this at this time. And when you wake up in the morning, you do this. There are like, you know what? I'm already bored. It's like, and no onions. And so where with Buddhism,
they're like, okay, no meat still here. Okay, no garlic. I'm out, bro. I'm out. It's like the final, what would you say, screening? Yeah, screening mechanism.
It's like, it's a more extreme example of that is the difference between, for example, early Christianity versus Judaism. It's like, well, what do I have to do to be a part of this? And it's like, well, there is some precedent for becoming one of us when you weren't previously one of us, but you do have to cut off part of your penis, and then my brother might kill you in your sleep. So,
no big deal, though. No big deal.
I'm going to go with Paul.
So Jainism is actually, this is interesting. It's the 9th biggest religion in the world. So it comes after Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, Sikhism, Judaism, Baha'ism, Confucianism, then Jainism is 9th.
I should clarify, by the way, I'm talking about biblical times, making a joke.
Sure,
of course, if you want to convert to Judaism today, there's plenty of places you can go. They'd be glad to have you. But I was making a joke based on, it's a sensitive time to be making jokes about Judaism.
That's a good point.
Shabbat shalom, everybody. Let's all be friends.
Okay, good. Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff here. Very interesting. It mentions, the 10 virtues are forgiveness, humility, straightforward. Oh, I like this one. Straightforwardness. I've never really seen that in a religion, right? Like, you got to be straightforward. Hey, quit beating around the bush. I haven't heard a religion say you got to be straightforward.
Yeah. There's one of the rules in for monks that's sort of like that. I'm trying to remember the exact words, but go on. What were the others?
Okay, I'll go. It says forgiveness, humility, straightforwardness, truthfulness, purity, self-restraint, penance, renunciation, non-possessiveness, and celibacy. Ooh. All right.
Yeah, that's a hard sell. A real hard sell.
No sex, no garlic, no meat. Oh man.
And it's like if you want to have sex, you can still be part of the religion, but you can't be on the path. You can't be a monk. You can't be one of the temple people. I mean, they have celibate monks and nuns in a variety of religions, including Buddhism and
even Catholic priests, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. There is a Gomateshwara statue located in the Indian state of Karnataka. It is a 57 Karnataka, sorry. 57 foot tall. It is the largest freestanding statue. So this must be of Mahavira, I believe.
Probably, yeah.
About 7 million adherents to the religion. Interesting. So the photo I see here, they almost look like they're dressed in it almost looks like Muslim gear, like sort of like hijabs or something like that. But maybe that's just this picture that I have here.
Interesting.
That's interesting. The part that sounds really interesting to me, I'd have to look into this, that part about the 6 eternal substances, where you have like the soul and then the matter entering the soul and then taking the matter out of the soul. That sounds interesting.
Sounds like alchemy, yeah.
Oh, there's also, very interesting. And there's also, there are 6 eternal substances, the living entities, the souls, right? And the non-living entities, which are subdivided into matter, motion, rest, space, and time. So it's like sentient, like you mentioned, like sentient life versus like matter, non-sentient, phenomenon or something like that. It seems like. Yeah.
Oh, I was going to mention in Lord Buddha's order, if you go around begging for food like you do when you're a monk, and somebody offers you meat, you eat it. But if they say, "What would you like tomorrow?" You're not allowed to say, "I'd like some more meat tomorrow, please." You're not allowed to do that. In fact, you're not allowed to specify what you want them to give you.
Right. That reminds me of Judaism. In Judaism, you're not supposed to eat like pork, obviously, and ham and things like that. And so, if a goy meaning a non-Jew, right, without your knowledge, throws some bacon into your soup while you're cooking it, or stuffs some bacon in your burger, then hey, no harm, no foul.
It's not a sin.
It's not a sin.
It seems like people might try to exploit that loophole.
I don't want any bacon in this burger. You feel me?
Yeah. And then the other one was if a lion has killed an animal and then it finished eating and it left, and you're walking with your fellow monks and you see this dead animal, you can take it, you can cook it, and you can have it, you can share it with the whole community of monks. So they're not exactly vegetarian in the strictest sense that we understand it now. But I mean, at least according to the ancient texts, the earliest Buddhists, but they weren't allowed to kill. They weren't allowed to ask someone to kill. If somebody said, "Sit down, I'll fix you some food," and then they go kill a chicken and then they cook it and they serve it to you, you eat it. But you're not allowed to say, could you kill that chicken right there? That one looks nice and juicy. Then you're not allowed to do that. So that's where they draw the line.
Right. Another interesting thing is I don't think I've seen Jainism anywhere else. I mean, it's obviously has a presence in India, but whereas Buddhism spread and the traditions of yoga and Hinduism, you can see, even in Indonesia and Southeast Asia and yoga, the more modern, post Vedanta and stuff. You see that everywhere in America, Europe. I don't think I've seen a single Jainist temple.
I've seen on YouTube. I don't know exactly where in Spanish-speaking America. I don't know if it was North, South, or Central America, which country exactly it was, somewhere between Mexico and Argentina. There's a bit of Jainist, presence happening. The guy that translated and gave the commentaries for these books, the sutras I read, those 25, and then this book, Equanimity, which is just talking generally about the path of Jainism based on these 25. I only read this one because I'm into old scriptures and things. and then this is the distilled essence of nonviolence. So that guy, that I want to get his name. It's Upadhyaya Amar Muni. He was considered a living saint. He was considered a saint in Jainism, at least in this branch of Jainism. And he lived, I think he was born in 1901. And so you could definitely tell that he understood the zeitgeist of the 1970s hippie, sort of rebellious, young, like, because he was trying to spin worshiping the guru in a way that would sound, good to someone who says reject authority or question authority. You know what I mean? Like he was translating the sutras for hippies, because there was this big flood of hippies. There were so many, hippies or spiritual seekers or whatever you want to call them in the 60s and 70s coming into India, that just by virtue of how many of them there were, some of them ended up in Jainist temples. And so he was, helping translate Jainism for them. And so kind of as a result of that time period, I think I would be surprised if there was zero Jainist presence in America and Canada and UK. There's probably at least a little bit, some cult somewhere in a house, but there's definitely some somewhere in Latin America.
I'm curious, like you living in India, what do you think? I mean, obviously you're alive in the modern era. You're not, 3,000 years ago living in India. But what do you think? What do you think about that society? Was it like the particular society, the caste movement? What do you think created this whole because India has, this whole culture of like going within, and Tantra comes from India, and these sort of yogas and all of these, internal mystical practices, right? What do you think is so unique about India that, it's not like, it's one of the regions that a lot of this comes from? What do you think? What do you see?
That is a very interesting question. And my mom loved India, so I kind of grew up, it's like when I think back on the sorts of conversations that I used to have with my mom when I was like 7, it's like she must have been leading the conversation, because 7-year-olds don't have conversations like that. But I remember having conversations with my mom asking that very question. And she had a theory that because the Himalayas were the newest mountain range on Earth, that there were some kind of minerals or some kind of chemicals or something from deep in the crust of the earth that ended up in the mountains, and that the Ganges, the Ganga River, actually picks up these nutrients on the way to becoming that ancient sacred river. That's one thing. It's a good question, and when Priyal and I first met, of course, I was in love with India before I met her, and she also, at the time was saying she didn't imagine herself being anywhere but India, because this is the land where the great masters, Mahavir, Lord Buddha, Osho,
I like how you throw Osho on
there. All the great masters,
Yeah.
There's others, Sai Baba and Ramakrishna, there's a whole bunch of others whose names she could rattle them off better than I could. But it's like there's something in the soil, a little bit of soft power, come to India, there's something in the soil, blood and soil. Just kidding. Just kidding. No.
Right.
No.
I remember Robert Thurman describes it as like sort of this culture of like these psychonauts. It's kind of like in the 60s where they dropped out of the whole Śramaṇa movement, and which led to the yogas and the tantrikas and the Shaivites and the Vajrayanists, right? It's sort of like these people, this whole group of, in that region of like northern India, Kashmir, where it's these groups of people that just want to like explore their internal workings. And Yeah, I think he called them like internal psychonauts or something like that. But that was a pretty cool explanation of it. Like how now people are like, yeah, let's do some acid, see what's going on, but they were they were kind of on that mindset, before commercial LSD was available.
One thing I can say is that out of 1.4 billion people, only about 50 million of them are gurus. So in other words, like, yeah, I mean, 50 million is a lot. I mean, if you found 50 million gurus in the US, that would be 1 out of every 7 people, but I mean, maybe it's 5 million, I don't know, but yeah, I forget the exact number, but it's not everybody is. There's this great scene and I recommend to your viewers, especially lovers of Buddhism, and if you haven't seen it yet, Shanzan. It's a Chinese movie. It's hopefully available to stream in Korea. I did a viewing, like I did a reaction where it's a 2-hour movie. I got it down to like 1 hour. And I watch it and it's playing in the corner, but it's blocked in Korea. I think what that means is the movie's popular in Korea. You know what I mean? Like it's very specifically in Korea.
You have to buy it on a platform or something.
Yeah. But Shanzan, I think it's like XUANZ, something like that. Shanzan. He was a 6th century Common Era monk who went to Nalanda University. He traveled from, I think, Beijing, what they call Beijing now, something like that. So he traveled from Tong. They used to call it, the name of the emperor, the name of the dynasty that was going on at the time. He came from Tong to Nalanda University. And gosh, what was my point? I was going to say something about that. Oh, well. Maybe it'll come back around.
So this is correlated to the movie. It's a true story, I'd imagine, or based on a true story? Okay.
Yeah, and there was some aspect of it that I am so sorry. I completely.
Well, you're gonna have to watch the movie to see what.
Yeah, I lost track of my thought. But there was something about what we were just talking about that was the reason.
Oh, sort of the internal psychonaut, exploring your internal reality, kind of.
Oh yeah, I remember now. So he came to India and he saw people, untouchables weren't allowed to walk on the road in the main town square, and he was saying, what, you're a person, why don't you? And so then someone was explaining to him, oh, he's an untouchable. He's from, there's certain types of people that and he was like, how is it that in the land of the Buddha, people are behaving in such an unenlightened way? He says this, it's true. This is the land that Buddha came from, but we're not all Buddhas here. It's like, yeah, that's true. So there's a lot of charlatans. I mean, because India has that reputation, and it also has a reputation for charlatans too. Just because somebody's wearing an orange robe, doesn't mean you should go with them to wherever they're telling you to go.
It doesn't mean you should jump in their van and eat their candy.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of very sincere practitioners and a lot of people, like there's an understanding of what the path looks like, or maybe this is like kind of the origin of that spin on what spirituality means. And it seems like there's references, at least in the New Testament, Paul writing to Timothy, I think, telling him, don't listen to those people who say that in order to be spiritual, you have to be vegetarian. And it's like, are you talking, like, because Rome was sort of a cosmopolitan city. So I think he might have been referring to yogis and people who went to India and came back and said, I'm on the path now, I don't eat meat. So people were joking about how, yeah, Christians eat meat. It's like written in the Bible that you're supposed to eat meat. You're like not supposed to be a vegetarian,
Right.
but then people might, read between the lines and say, yes, but Jesus taught compassion, and I'm a red letter Christian who's also practices yoga. People find their own path. People find their own nuance. I certainly have a nuanced path that doesn't fit in any particular box.
Right, for sure.
You can't really be a Buddhist if you have a cross, and you can't really be a Christian if you're a Buddhist, and you can't really, well, whatever. I don't claim to be any of those, but I do claim to be all of them. Or many of them.
Without limitations. But,
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I think this was a good podcast to kind of give a little bit of a taste of Jainism. We got to hear about your teachers in Bahir, a little bit about what Jainism consists of. Also, I got to read off a little bit about like their rules and their sort of reality. We got to check out their scriptures a bit. And that cool little
and I read all the scriptures, and the link below, there's 25 of these sutras that I read and give descriptions about, and comment, and actually the beginning, the very first of those recitals, it shows on the map and goes into detail about Bodh Gaya and Rajgir and where that is, and where Bihar is, and all that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so if people want to learn a little more, they can click that.
Yeah.
And the word I kept forgetting is Tirthankara, right? Yeah.
Tirthankara.
Sorry, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
I keep forgetting. Yeah, the first Tirthankara was
good.
Tirthankara is a guide to the Dharma or the righteous path. The first Tirthankara was Rishabhanatha, according to Jain texts.
Yes.
Credited with teaching the first professions. He taught humanity, swordship solely for defense, writing, agriculture, knowledge, trade, and crafts. So sort of like the first enlightened being who teaches us about the righteous path.
Yeah, but the word origin, Tirthankara, is religious ford, or
as you mentioned, right.
Ford finder is another word they use, but I think Tirthankara specifically means like Dharma ford, so like a quick way to get across the river, implying that if you don't find one of these, but then they also use the word ford or Tirthankara when referring to things like being vegetarian or being practicing brahmacharya, not having sex. These are all things that will help you across the river. So they're like spiritual fords. And I think that personally speaking, I think, while it may be extreme to say, don't have sex, never have sex again, don't touch a lady, like there's wisdom there. Like people become super obsessed. I mean, even today, like someone could be a virgin their whole life, but be a porn addict their whole life. And then are they on the, is that helping? You know what I mean?
Right.
So that would, be something that's, and I don't know if people go to the other extreme and say, no nut November or whatever, don't let your seed out. And it's like, well, I don't know, that's a path you can try. But I think that it's kind of like two extremes, like being extremely indulging is like the devil path on the tree of life. Being extremely ascetic is like the death path on the tree of life. And at least in Golden Dawn, they teach that you should find that temperance path.
Sure.
Where it's like,
the middle way.
It's okay to have sex, but it's not so good if you're obsessed with it. If you're every day, you're beating yourself up because no one's attracted to you, or you think no one's attracted to you, or if you are obsessed with making yourself attractive and going to the bar and like hooking up, and that's kind of your main focus of life. I mean, if you don't mind if I ramble a little, in the Cromlech temple, in the flying rolls, there's someone who's saying, like, don't look down upon people whose highest ideal is sensual pleasure. And it's like, okay, yeah, I'm not looking down on that. I'm just suggesting that maybe there's something beyond it. And I think that sometimes people find an existential horror in thinking, if I don't have this, if I don't cling to this, then what's beyond that will is a terrifying void of non-self, and it's like, but that's okay. I mean, it's not that bad, like you get beyond that, and you can be in a space where you don't need that. One of my teachers, Gordon,
you don't need that, but you can enjoy it. You can
have it
or take it. Yeah.
Yeah, like with food is another one. Like if you're every day you have to have a double cheeseburger, you're going to have a heart attack,
Right.
But if it might help to fast. There's not as much fasting in Buddhism, but they have certain rules about when you should eat and how much, and don't eat too much and only eat during these hours and this kind of thing. At least for the monks in ancient Buddhism. But yeah, I mean, there's wisdom in it, whether you buy it or not, whether you're on the path or not, whether you're into Eastern things or not. It's worth considering that maybe the sexual energy and the food energy and desiring and clinging, and even I think in a lot of Jesus's teachings as well, you can find him making reference. I can't think of any exact specific references right now, but like things like love or money, or God or money. You can live your life in pursuit of riches on earth, or you can seek out riches in heaven. And if you seek out riches in heaven, you'll get riches in heaven and on earth. Things like that,
yeah, for sure.
Doesn't necessarily mean you'll win the lottery and be a millionaire on earth. But I mean, I think if you find your riches in heaven, in other words, if you find your sense of happiness in not needing anything, then you'll find that the few sesame seeds, the few sunflower seeds that you get to eat today are better than any feast that a king is enjoying somewhere else.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there is value in restricting yourself on certain things, just to learn that lesson, right? Whether it's a fast, a meditation, a silent retreat, or something like that, right? You learn the value. Like you also learn these thought patterns that are popping up. Like you didn't realize you were addicted to checking your phone, or constantly thinking.
A day without a glowing screen. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
These days,
you can
that's
come back
kind of
and
big one,
enjoy
actually.
those things without being controlled by these desires or these thought loops, right? So for sure.
Yeah, glowing screens is probably a bigger one than food these days, but I mean both are.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
5 minutes off the phone. Impossible.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right. Well, it's late on this, and it's almost midnight.
Okay. Yeah, you need to get some sleep.
But yeah, for sure. But it's been a good chat, and
likewise.
Until next time.
Okay, sounds good. I'll send you the link to those Jain recitals.
Oh, for sure. Okay, sounds good. Okay, take it easy.
Okay, cool. Okay, good night.
Yeah, good night.
See you.
Thank you, Ryan. That was fun. That was a very spontaneous conversation. He asked me if I wanted to do a podcast, simulcast episode, I think 10 minutes or 15 minutes before we started recording. So sometimes spontaneity is good. Special thanks to Susumu Ueda, as well as his father and the other monks at Jofukuin. His father's one of the monks at Jofukuin on Mount Koyasan, the heart of Shingon, the Japanese Vajrayana in Japan there. For the music you're hearing right now, which is actually the same track that opens every Esoterinerd episode, though the music you're hearing right now sounds very different than that did. Special thanks to Camille and Kennerly for the harp transition into and out of the conversation, and most importantly, special thanks to you, the Esoterinerd, listening to this podcast. All right. Well, that's 2 episodes in 3 or 4 days. It's unusual. Sometimes with this podcast, there's long gaps between episodes. So who knows when I will see you again, but if you miss me, you can always find me here Every few days I'm posting an episode there. For the people who aren't watching me on YouTube, I just pointed to a link to Buddhist Books podcast. And right now I'm talking so that there will be at least 17 seconds between that link and this one. This is the Multiverse Cartographer playlist, where I break down in detail the New World Empire and the Interdimensional Coffee House and the Multiverse Cartographer. All right. That's enough out of me. I'll go ahead and close. To the north and to the south, to the east and to the west, to the spirits of light among us and to the spirits below, we send out our reverent love and compassion. May all beings be happy. May all beings be serene. May all beings be in peace. Until next time.